What is one of the first questions you get asked right out the gate when it comes to going to an interview? That is, could you please tell me what are your salary expectations? Hey everyone, I'm Erin from Powerstaff Consulting, Specialist Recruitment and Executive Search, based here in South Australia, and I've been in the recruitment industry for the last 15 years. So today's video being all about how to answer that horrible question, how much are you looking for your salary expectations? Today we're going to break down some important information that'll help you tackle this in the future. In actual fact, as a job seeker, this is one of the most important responses that you need to master and be prepared for. Because if you answer it wrong, it can have dire consequences, let me tell you. So be prepared, watch this video, and you're going to learn tips, tricks, and a response or a number of responses. This is the sort of question that you're going to be asked at various stages throughout the process. It could be asked when you're applying for a job on a job board, putting through an application. It can be asked from a recruiter in a phone screen situation, or in a interview face-to-face with a recruiter. Nowadays with COVID, maybe a video interview, or it could be asked directly from an employer themselves. It is, however, not a video about a salary negotiation. We do cover that. Towards the end of the video, there'll be a link provided where you can see a full breakdown on how to actually negotiate salaries, all the fundamental factors, considerations, perspective, strategies, different situation for a different day. Click on that at the end. Question, what are your salary expectations? Actually has two different purposes. The first purpose is, realistically, we would like to cull the herd. We want to eliminate you as a candidate straight away or soon into the question, what are your salary expectations? So you have to be very wary of this. The second one is, okay, so things are going well, you're further along the process, they're getting towards the end of it, and they want to know, okay, there's some interest here in yourself, there's some value that's been built up through the conversation, some rapport that's been built. Okay, what are your salary expectations? Now we're on the closing stages of, we're looking to put forward an offer. We want to see where you're at. We're actually getting serious now. At the beginning of the process, this is when this sort of question comes into place, because they want to pre-qualify what your expectations are and how they're going to fit the budget of the role. And you know, they can go through a lot of time in being able to interview a lot of candidates. So often, you know, it's trying to make sure that, you know, we can eliminate this person early into the process. We've got a lot of people to speak to, a lot of people to interview. The less people we've got, the easier the recruitment process will be. So let's try and work on the salary, because if we get to the end of the process, they look fantastic, they answer the questions right, everything's great, but their salary expectations are wildly outside of what the budget is going to be for the role. It makes a lot more sense to tackle that earlier into the piece. The trick is really expecting this, knowing what to say, how to handle it, and making sure that you put your best foot forward, and build the value by building the rapport with them, having more of a conversation about the role, the position, your background, without going straight to the dollars at the front. You really need to leave that towards the end. In fact, you know, there may be a budget in place, and in some cases, particularly for professional level roles, there may be some ability to move around this. One thing you can do as a candidate, yes, you are being asked questions. However, you have an opportunity to ask some of your own questions to pre-qualify whether perhaps that salary range is actually going to be fixed. One way to do this is looking at asking questions to try and figure out what's the reason for the role. How critical is this role to the business? How urgent is it that they fill this position? How niche are some of these skill sets that they're looking for, and how will they apply to your background? If you get a sense that, okay, my skill set, my experience marries up really well to this role, and they're pretty urgently looking for someone to fill the boots of this role, there may be an opportunity for you to think about, when you do talk dollars, trying to go towards that upper end and above, because demand and supply, you've established there's a high level of demand, and this is your opportunity to go in and make the best out of it. So we've established that, at this stage of the process, what are your salary expectations? Realistically, it's going to be there to try and eliminate you and cull the herd, as we said. So, the first time you might start getting this question is actually at the very beginning of the process, when you're applying on a job board and sending through an application. There may be fields that you've got to pre-populate that might say, what are your salary expectations? There may be an opportunity to leave them blank. If you can, I recommend that you do. There may not be able to submit the application based on not filling out that particular field. So then the next thing I would try and do is maybe put TBC, to be confirmed. If that's not an option, go back to the job, because a lot of the job adverts, they'll either be labelled as a salary range, in which case you already have an idea pegged at what this role, the budget's going to be. And if you're wildly out of that, maybe you shouldn't be wasting your time or theirs applying to the job. However, sometimes there isn't a clear salary labelled. Another thing you can do is go into the search parameters on the actual job board itself. So with like seek.com.au, it's a job board here in Australia. You can look at different jobs, break them down into different categories. What you can then do and look at the locations, etc. Look at the salary, and then you can break it down in a certain range to a certain range. So even if the salary isn't itemised on the job, the jobs that come up in that search, if the salary is hidden, you'll still be able to see what their proposed budget is behind that. So worst case scenario, if you have to put something in, you can't leave it blank, you can't do the odd 2BC, then I recommend just matching, for the purposes of the application, the exact parameters of what the search or what the job identifies. Because realistically, you can still have that conversation, but you need to move to the next stage of the process. Assuming that you've now got through the job application stage and your resume is sitting in front of the recruiter, they're going to want to know, how much are they looking for? So in order for them to do their job, they need to package everything up for their client. So realistically, this is when the question is going to be asked again. And what's important here is that you don't give a specific number. It's very important you don't do this at this point in time because realistically they will be trying to eliminate you. Remember that, and you can sort of say, through my research and my experience, my thoughts are that I've got an idea of what sort of salary that a role like this would offer for yourselves, but considering that this role is being approved and there would be a budget for that, I'd really be keen to learn what sort of a budget have you been assigned for this particular role. Once you identify if there is a budget that they disclose, you can say, look, something in that at this stage sounds fine, but I'd really like to delve a little bit further into the position so I can learn a bit more about it and then see what my expected salary would be based on that information. You also, at this stage of the process, are fairly uneducated about the role. You do not know a lot of the information about the culture, about the business, about the structure, about the career opportunities, about the progression opportunities, the benefits, the leave. All this information, you're providing a number which isn't really aligned to that, and so therefore you can pitch it too high, in which case that could be the end of the story, or you could pitch it too low and it's very hard to come back up from that once you've done that. So my recommendation is don't give a specific figure And just remember, the recruiter has a job to do. Their job is to get the right person to fit the role as best they can. Part of that is the financial component. But if the rest of it lines up nicely, the recruiter's still going to recommend that candidate to the employer. And they're going to say to the employer, this person looks great for this reason, this reason, and this reason. I wasn't able to establish what sort of salary expectations they have. What do you want to do? And odds are the employer's going to say, yep, they look good. Let's have a look at their resume. That's fine. Tell you what, ask them in for an interview, schedule that. We'll sit down, we'll go through that in person. So at this stage of the process, when the recruiter asks you, what are your salary expectations? The correct response is, at this stage, I'd prefer not to disclose my salary expectations until I find out more information about the role. I'd love to learn a bit more about the business, the expectations, the role, then look into that at a later point in the process. They're going to ask you, if you weren't able to give a salary, what is your current salary where you're employed now? Or if you were employed previously and you're not employed at the moment, what was your most recent salary in the role that you had at this company? So, it's a difficult one to answer. And in fact, there are places around the world where, from what I understand, it's illegal to actually ask that question. But for everywhere else that it isn't, such as Australia where I'm based, it pays to have a response in your back pocket you can pull out and say, the actual salary that I'm currently earning is, I believe, a bit related mostly to the circumstances around that company. They have their own budget for these sorts of roles, and they will pay people based on the size of the business, the work they're doing, the other people within the business, their own set of policies around leave entitlements, flexibility, opportunities for progression, all those sorts of things, which, you have that, then you've got, my market value as a candidate within the industry, and then you've got your role with your unique set of circumstances. So across the spectrum, I think I really probably prefer not to provide that, because I don't see how that's going to relate to your role. And I'd really love to learn more about that so that I can see, what my value would be, in my opinion, based on what your expectations are. And they keep asking you, what are your salary expectations? Here's when you say, look, all right, salary is not my most critical consideration. As with everyone, it is an important factor that I will take into consideration ultimately in the next role that I do move forward with. For the purposes of today's discussion, I could give you a range of anywhere from, let's say, 70,000 through to 120,000. Where I sit along that spectrum is really going to depend on the position itself, the expectations of the role, and some other considerations which I really look forward into learning a bit more about, so I know where along that spectrum I will identify. The important thing here is, you never at this stage give a number. And giving a really wide range, it makes it very hard for them to eliminate you based on the financial side, and really pay more attention to the other areas, which allows you to build that net worth value in their eyes as a candidate. And then, towards the end of the process, you gear up for that top end of the range. But at the beginning stages, it's very hard for you to do that. So it gets you through the stage, gets you past that elimination phase, onto the next part, and gets their attention away from the dollars and onto the most important stuff. The next stage of the process is probably a face-to-face, phone call, whatever it looks like, with the company themselves. And you can bet they're going to ask you that question, but you may find that they may be a little bit less sharp than the recruiter in going directly for the kill on that. Sometimes they will be, and it depends on the person that you're sitting across from. A lot of the time they'll probably leave that till a bit later in the process. It's helpful to be able to get to this stage of the process and really hold out to the end, so that you don't give a specific number on what you're looking for until you've built that value, that equity in your capability, and that interest and demand from their end. And when it finally comes down to you're interested in the role, it's getting up to that point when you've got enough information to make an educated decision in your mind. You already sort of know what you want. You have all the way along. Maybe you've tweaked that a little bit. Maybe you want more because the role's going to be demanding lots of hours. Maybe it's a bigger business. You think you might be able to get a bit more money as a result. Maybe you think, because of all this flexibility, it's right around the corner. I'm probably happy to be a bit more flexible. You have these conversations in your own mind, not necessarily verbally. You don't want to give away that position, but now you're getting towards the end of the process. It's time for them to determine what is the salary expectations that you have, and for you to feel comfortable in identifying what they are. What you want to do here, and I will talk about this in other videos, there is a link at the end of this video which will take you to another video I've done on negotiating salaries, which is a different skill set, and a whole video dedicated to a lot of information around tips and tricks and more perspective again. However, with this situation, if you're going to be giving your expectations, what you want to do here is you want to be giving a single figure. You don't want to be giving a range. You want to be giving a single figure, and it's going to be above your reserve. It has to be above your reserve within a reasonable amount. I would recommend somewhere within 10% to 15% of your ideal salary that you feel is fair and reasonable based on what you bring to the table, that isn't going to give you expectations that you can't fulfill, and something that you think is within their realms. At the end of the day, they may or may not agree with that. They may or may not give you an offer at that particular figure. If they come down, odds are it'll be either above or at your reserve, in which case, in your mind, you already knew you're probably going to take the role at that. And then they feel like they're getting, perceived a good deal as well. So the worst thing you can do is give a range, because whatever the lowest is in that range, ding, 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 that's what they're hearing. And in your mind, subconsciously, you're targeting that top end of the range. As a recruiter, I see them offer, in some cases, in the middle or at the top of that range, very, very rarely above that. But I would say somewhere in the 70 or a percent above, they're going to be either at the lower end of that range or below. You want to go in there with confidence. You want to be able to justify your worth. You want to be able to tell them, after knowing all the information about the role, why you're the right candidate, why you should get the role, and what you're worth for this particular role. And you want to have that in a documented salary. So there you have it. What are your salary expectations? Not a question you've ever got to fear again. It will be something that you deal with as a job seeker, probably quite a few times into the future. Hopefully not too many times, but if you do, you know how to answer it. Would love to hear if you've got any insights or if you have any experiences to do with this particular question. Put them in the comments below, and also hit the subscribe button. Click on the like button if you can, that'd be great. We will be releasing ongoing and regular videos about the world of employment, to do with things like this as a job seeker, as well as a whole host of other areas regarding employing people, looking for talent, how to get good people, how to keep good people, and also how to climb the corporate ladder. So check out that video on negotiating salaries. You're going to need it. See you in the next video.